All right, it's a Friday night, and we have to do an emergency show here on Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior, because we have some breaking-ish news to get to, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj saying that the Sixers are moving closer toward a Ben Simmons trade. That's what we're breaking down on today's show. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel by hitting that red subscribe button down below. Our last 5 videos have really popped off. Shout out to everybody who supported the channel. 8,000 views, 9K, 7.5, 11K, and 10K in our last 5, and we're less than 2,000 people away from 3,000 subscribers. We have to honor one of the greatest players in the history of sports and one of the most influential athletes ever in Allen Iverson by getting to 3K subs. I'm a Philly area dude. This has been a little bit of my baby of a channel at Chat Sports because we launched it back in the summer, and we've been growing like crazy. We want to grow further, and we want to push out more videos because whether we're at the Chat Sports studios or I have to do a video from the crib, we have you covered with everything going down with the Sixers because we love talking ball and we love talking Sixers. Let's hop into these juicy trade rumors surrounding this franchise right now. According to Woj, Ben Simmons trade talks are, quote, gathering momentum. The Sixers are becoming more engaged on multiple fronts and talks centered around Simmons. Woj said Philadelphia has been aggressively trying to assemble 2- and 3-team deal structures to land a package that would include a top 25 level player, sources said. And that's one of the big reasons why Daryl Morey hasn't pulled the trigger on a Ben Simmons trade yet. He feels as though he has not gotten an offer back in exchange for Ben Simmons that meets his value, that helps this team right now and in the future surrounding Joel Embiid, and he feels as though he hasn't been offered a player back that matches the pedigree of Ben Simmons, who, while his value is certainly down, is still a 3-time All-Star, one of the best defenders in the league, and can really be a special player on the offensive end, even without shooting the rock because of his special size, his special athleticism, and his really unique passing ability for how big he is. And look, this is still a really young player, and if he does develop some semblance of a jump shot from the elbow, from the baseline, even a corner 3, if he's just somewhat competent there, it makes him a much more dangerous and valuable player. So I understand where Daryl Morey is coming from. I do think he has to make a trade as soon as possible to maximize the prime level years of Joel Embiid, who over the last couple of games since recovering from COVID has really played like an MVP. Let's get back to that reporting from Woj and just the overall spectrum of everything. The key date to focus on is this Wednesday, December 15th. That's when players who sign contracts over the summer are eligible to be traded. So it opens up the pool for assets in a Ben Simmons trade. As of right now, about 65% of the NBA can be dealt. On Wednesday, though, that number jumps up to about 85%. So again, the talent pool just becomes larger for Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, and the Sixers front office. Now, that makes things interesting because there could be players who were just signed in NBA free agency who the Sixers are looking at, or obviously long-term players who have been with their respective teams for a little while. We do also have to include Damian Lillard in this conversation as well because he has been the apple of Daryl Morey's eye. I think if Morey had it his way, he would trade Ben Simmons and maybe a player or two, maybe picks involved as well, for Damian Lillard, who would be an ideal fit next to Joel Embiid. I'm a little bit concerned considering his price tag, the fact that he's 31 years old right now. There's been some regression. And he also just got a cortisone shot for an abdominal injury that he just suffered over the summer during the Olympics. So you're looking at a player whose numbers are down this year. He's getting a little bit older, had as a small guard who has such a high usage rate, age, especially considering that price tag. But according to Woj, Portland Trailblazers reiterated to the Sixers that their top target is not available in Damian Lillard. The Sixers and Blazers have connected in recent days, according to Wojnarowski, but Portland's interim general manager Joe Cronin, who stepped in for Neil Olshey, who was fired because of an investigation that looked into alleged misconduct, made it clear to Philadelphia they don't plan to part ways with Lillard. After the recent firing of Olshey, Cronin, kind of in the days after, as this happened somewhat recently, has said that the franchise plans on keeping Lillard, and Damian Lillard said on Wednesday night, look, You guys keep talking about drumming up this trade interest. I want to say here, and that goes along with everything that Lillard has basically said, that he wants to stay in Portland, he wants to be loyal to that franchise, and he wants to be a part of that turnaround in the Pacific Northwest. So if the Sixers can't trade for Damian Lillard, who are some of the other players in the mix? This is a list that I kind of put together really quickly off the top of my head because this is a breaking news video. I'm off today from the crib. Just wanted to push out a video because this is all very significant. But this list consists of guys who we've talked about here on the channel as trade assets and trade targets, reported names who the Sixers have reportedly been interested in, and other guys who I think could be a decent haul for Ben Simmons. And of course, other trade assets on the Sixers. You're looking at guys like Tyrese Maxey, who I wouldn't want to trade, maybe even a Tobias Harris if you have to match salaries. And what's a big part of that Woj report is that it could take 3 teams to maneuver and pull off a Simmons trade in order to make money work for those other 2 teams, and then get players sent elsewhere to those respective teams as well. So as for that list, long shots, maybe even more realistic targets, here are the guys: Kyrie Irving, CJ McCollum, Andrew Wiggins, James Wiseman, Christian Wood, D'Angelo Russell, Pascal Siakam, DeJounte Murray, maybe anybody on the Knicks, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield. I think Darius Garland is now off limits. Jaylen Brown, I think the Celtics would be crazy to trade him. But that's a list of about 12 players who I think the Sixers could hone in on if they do want to make a trade. And some of those guys can be dealt prior to Wednesday. Some of these other guys and other players around the league cannot be dealt until Wednesday or in the days after that. If you remember a couple of years ago, I think the Sixers made that trade for Jimmy Butler at some point in the early to middle portion of the season. That's kind of the situation that we're looking at right now for Ben Simmons. As for Joel Embiid, I said this the other day, and I want to reiterate this because I think it's really important for the direction of this team, the current construct of this roster, and the Ben Simmons trade conversations overall. I think it's really important for Daryl Morey to make a trade of Ben Simmons as soon as possible. Given that Joel Embiid has been brittle, he's dealt with a bunch of injury issues. Yes, he's still in his mid to late 20s. You don't know how he's going to age. You don't know when other injuries are going to pop up and affect him. You don't know how long he is going to be at the absolute peak of his powers. And considering that you just signed him to that contract extension, a max deal over the summer, he is going to be the face of your team for the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years at the very least, depending on what they do at the back end of that contract that he did sign over the summer. So I think it's important for Morey to look at this team right now and realize, look, we are good enough to compete in the East and be a top 5 seed, make it into the playoffs, and because we have some talented pieces on this team, we can win a playoff series or 2. Now, of course, during the Embiid regime, him and Ben Simmons have not escaped out of the second round. They've had some bad luck. The Kawhi Leonard quadruple bounce. They had a choke job against the Atlanta Hawks 2 years ago in the NBA bubble. Joel Embiid really had to carry the team by himself because Ben Simmons was hurt. I still don't think it would have mattered in a first-round defeat against the Boston Celtics. But the point here being, you don't know how long Embiid is going to be playing at this level. And that's why I think it's really important to make a trade right now to try to take advantage of his prime years. Don't do what Sixers ownership and the front office did not do for Allen Iverson when he was competing for MVPs, when he was phenomenal, when he was one of the best players in the NBA in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and not surround him with elite pieces that gives the Sixers an opportunity to compete for a championship. Yes, they made a deal for a Dikembe Mutombo, and that's what helped you get past the Eastern Conference Finals and that thrilling playoff run back in 2001. You won game 1 of the finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, then you lost 4 straight to Shaq and Kobe. That was great. After that, though, really, Philadelphia didn't do anything to surround Iverson with the necessary components to help him maximize his talents, to cater to his strengths, to let him be the focal star player of the team, and to chase championships. You traded for Chris Webber too late. You traded for Keith Van Horn too late. Andre Iguodala was a very nice complimentary piece, but that's about all he was, especially early in his career when he was a little bit raw and he wasn't a legitimate number 2 option. You traded for Derek Coleman. At the back end, you didn't do much at all. Do not do what you didn't do for Allen Iverson. History tells you you really need a couple of star players to compete for a championship. Right now, the Sixers have one bona fide star in Joel Embiid and a bunch of other very nice pieces. They need another co-star for Embiid to be a serious threat in a very deep Eastern Conference. Before I get out of here on a Friday night, gonna go grocery shopping, probably gonna take down some beers at a bar a little bit later. Subscribe to the channel, especially if you made it this far. We're trying to get to 3,000 subs. If you want more videos around the Sixers, we need more subscribers. Thanks for watching today's show. Peace. And when a Ben Simmons trade happens, you know we have you covered.